So in this video, we're going to walk through the entire Nowa 3.1. So Nowa recently released a 3.1 version, and it's now the best place to build production Flutter apps insanely fast with AI and visual building from the first step to the last step without needing to know Flutter. So let's see how it works. So the moment you log into your account, you will see that you can create a project as a cloud project or as a local project. Now, a cloud project is just a project that is hosted on Nowa Cloud, which means that you can access the project from any device when you open from the same account. But a local project is a standard Flutter project hosted completely on your own machine. But to be able to work with a local project, you need to have the Nowa desktop version. And we will talk about this later in this video. But for now, let's just start with a cloud project. And if you look on the left side, you will see some sample projects. And those are some projects that you can actually just add to your own account and then modify. But now let's go back to the cloud project and let's just create a new one by clicking here. You will also see that you can clone a project from GitHub if you have a Nowa project that is on GitHub. But now I will just create one from scratch and I will call it my first Nowa app. Let's click on create. Now, when it opens, you will see that it created a homepage for you, and you will see that this homepage now lives inside a board. Now, the board name is first board, and with this board, you can actually place multiple UI components next to each other, very similar to Figma. But now let's see some panels around us. So in the top, you will see the toolbar, and this contains some of the tools that you can use to build the app. On the right side, you will see the details panel, and the details panel will allow you to control all the details for anything you select. Above the details panel is the variables panel, where you can view the variables that is inside the screen or in the whole project. Here you will see the outline, and the outline will tell you what do you have on this board and the widget trees inside each screen. Now on the left side, you will see some bar, and here we have some interesting tools to see. Now, if you click on this one, this is the AI agent, which is super powerful in Nowa. And here you will be able to do anything using AI. We will come back to this step later. Next to it, you will see now the project pages and components. Here you will be able to see the themes. So you can set a theme for your app. You can set some typography. Below that, it's the API collection. And here you can set up the APIs for your app. Then we have a Supabase integration where you can integrate Supabase and build the queries and use them inside your app. Here you'll be able to create a Git repository for your cloud project. And with this, you'll be able to discard changes, do commits, do push and pull to the remote repository if you have a remote repository on GitHub. The last option is to view your project files and folders. And here, for example, I can see the lib folder, which is the folder that you will find in any normal Flutter project. And here I can see the pages, I can see the main.dart, and I can see even the globals that contains some of the global variables like the one responsible for the app state and the themes. Now below this, I can see the boards. Now I have only one board, but I can create multiple boards. For example, I can create a board that will hold the authentication flow. Now below this is the assets, and here you can upload any asset that you need in your app, whether it's like an image, an audio, a custom font as well, or a video. So now we will dive into details of those panels. So now starting with the toolbar. So the first tool is shape, which is just a container. So I can just click on it and I can just draw a shape, and I can even drop it inside screen. Now the nice thing is because I have a board, I can keep it outside, customize it, and then for example, drop it inside. Now the next tool is to create a new screen. And here I can create an empty screen, or I can actually start from one of those templates that I can instantly add to my project and use. Now I will keep this for later. The next is just the text widget. So I can choose it, click in anywhere I want to add the widget to, and then I can customize it. The next is the panel to view all the widgets that you can use to build your app. So here I have a list for everything I can use to build the UI of the app. For example, let me drop an image. So I can drop an image, for example, and I will drop a button, and I will drop also a text field. So I can drag and drop them, or I can just click on them, and then I will see them added automatically. Now on the right side, as we said, this is a details panel that where you can control the things you select. Now nothing is selected, so I see the details of the board itself. So for example, I can turn on the grid if I want to, and I can even change the background color. So if I choose now the screen, I can see the details of the screen. Let me close the variables panel now. And here, for example, I can rename the page. Below it, I can control the layout of the page, so the width and the height, and also the position on the board. Now below this, I can see the main layout of the screen. So now it's selected to be a stack, which means that widgets have a free position inside the screen. So I can freely, for example, position any widget I want in the screen. But if I change it to make it, for example, a column, then all the widgets, as you can see here now, are arranged to be above each other. Now I can control the alignment, I can control even the space, if I want more space or less space between them. I can also reorder them. So if I do this, I can reorder the widgets in the layout. To learn more about the layout, you can of course check the documentation. But now let's keep going. Now this option is for safe area, and if I click here, I can turn on and off which corners I wanted to have a safe area. Below this, I can see some screen properties. Now, because I'm selecting a screen, I will see here these screen properties. Now, starting from the background color. So if I change it to something else, for example, I can change the background color. And those colors are coming from the themes, actually. Let's now get it back to the original color. Now, below this, I can see app bar property. So let's now talk a little bit about the properties on the left side. So those are properties where you can attach some values to it. And those values can be a fixed value, like a color, or they can be even a widget, like the app bar here, or it can be even a function. So the app bar is a property that takes a widget, and now it's already attached to a widget, which is the app bar, as we can see here. Now, if I click on the brush now, if you see in the selection, I am now inside the app bar, and the selection is around the app bar. So now anything I do here, I can now change the properties of that app bar. So for example, I can change now the background to something else. Well, this is not the best choice for the background for the app bar, but we're gonna keep it for now. I can also set some actions, for example, if I want some actions in the app bar. And then if I click on the brush, I can go inside the action, inside the app bar, so then I can go as deep as I want to. But now I'll just actually delete the actions. So I can do this by simply just go and change the number to 0. And then when I click on the home page, now I am back to the home page. Now below this, I can see some null values, and this means that those properties are not taking any value. So for example, the bottom navigation bar is not taking any widget. But if I click here, I can then attach or add a widget to be the navigation bar of the home page. And here, if I search for the navigation bar and I click on it, I can see now I added a navigation bar, and even I can see it now here in the screen. Now, if I click on the navigation bar, I'm already inside it. Or, as we said before, you can just click on the brush icon, and then you will be actually inside the navigation bar. Now, here you'll see some properties of this navigation bar, like the index, also here the items, which is all the icons. So I can add a new icon or item, and then I can see it here. And for example, if I choose now the third item, it consists of an icon property, which is connected to an icon widget. Then if I go inside the icon widget, I can then change the icon widget to another widget, for example, and then it will change in the navigation bar. So as you can see here, it's all recursive. It's just a widget that has properties or values, and those properties can be another widget, and then those widgets can have also another properties and values, and vice versa. And this is how the app or the screen is fully constructed. So now going back to the home page. So we talked about a screen, but let's talk about a widget. So now if I choose the container, for example, now I will see some different properties here. So for example, now under the container, I can see the properties of the container. Now I can see like the color, for example, which I can change to something else. And here I can see there is no value added as a border. But by clicking on plus, I can add a border value to this border property. And now I can see there's a slight border around the container widget. I can then maybe increase the width, also maybe change the color, and then I can see, for example, the value is now being changed. If I just want to remove it, I can click on this button, and then I can remove the value that I just added to the border. Now below in the bottom, you can see something called add wrapper. And a wrapper is just simply a widget that has a single child. So we can wrap up this container with another widget that will give it some properties. So if I click on the wrappers to see the list, I can see, for example, I can add a padding wrapper, which will add padding around this container. I can also add a visibility, for example, that will control if this widget will be visible or not. I can add an opacity. So let me, for example, add the opacity wrapper. So now this opacity wrapper is wrapping the container widget, as I can see here, and I can even now change the opacity. And it's just between 0 and 1. So if I put like 0.5, oops, what is this number? Let's go with 0.5. Now it's half or 50% visible, for example. Now if I go with 1, for example, it's now 100% visible. Now I can add, for example, another wrapper above it. For example, I can add a gesture detector. And a gesture detector is just a wrapper that makes me able to detect if the user clicked on this widget. And by doing that, now I can see some properties like onTab, which accepts a function. If I click on the plus next to it, I can then here build a function or a logic flow that will happen when the user click on that widget. Now this is a called circuit, which is the logic editor inside Nowa where you can build functions and logic. Let's now close it. By the way, the order also sometimes matters. So here I have a container widget and there's an opacity wrapper wrapping the container widget. And then I can see there's a gesture detector wrapping the opacity that is wrapping the container. So this is now the core widget and the opacity is above it. And then the gesture detector is above them. So sometimes reordering the wrappers might make a difference. So if I just drag and drop here, for example, now in this case, it might not do anything, but for other cases, the order of the wrappers might make a difference. Now let's just remove both wrappers. And I want to drop the widget back to the screen. And also I want to change the layout to make it stack so I can give the widgets some freedom to be located anywhere in the screen. Now, if I look here, I can see there's fixed values for properties, but what if I want this value to be dynamic, to be changeable? I can do this by simply clicking on the property. And here I can see multiple options of what I can do. For example, I can create a variable. And by clicking here, Nowa will create a variable from the same type of this property and connect it to this property. I can then also do compute, which then opens the logic editor where I can put some logic to compute the value of the color. I can also go with custom expressions, and here I can simply paste a dot expression that should return a color value in the end, which will be the value of the color property of the container. But now let's just click and choose a variable. So what happened now is Nowa created a variable called variable1, and the type is color. Why? Because the color property accepts color value, or the value that need to be attached to the color property should be a color. You cannot attach, for example, a number to a color. And if you go now to the variable section, I can see my variable here. So Nowa will create the variable in the screen level. So now the screen, which is a home page, has a variable called variable1. And this variable1 is connected to the container. So if I change the value here to something else like green, I can then see the container color changing. Now another way is I can just simply create a variable and then here I can change the type to make it color. And then I can connect this variable to the color property by simply going to the color itself, clicking on it, and then opening locals. And then I can just, by clicking on variable2, I'm now connecting the color property to the new variable I create. So you can do it in both ways. So now if I just change the variable2 to another color, I will see the color changing. So why do you even use variables? So the idea is that sometimes you want to change those values dynamically, or when something happens in the app. For example, I can do it that when the user click on this button, I can change the color to something else. So let's see this use case. So here I choose as the button, and then if I scroll down, I can then see one of the properties called onPress that takes a function. This is a function that simply will be executed when the user click on that button. So now let me open the circuit, which is the logic editor. And what I'm going to do here is I will click on this plus node to add a node to the flow. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to locals. And here I can see the local variables I have in the screen. So the button and the container are both in the same screen, meaning the locals for them will be the same because the variables lives either on a screen level or in the full app level. There is no variable for a specific widget. So now here under locals, I can see variable2. So if I click on it and then I click on set, I can then change it to something else. So if I want to change it to blue, for example, or purple, I can do that, and then this node will change variable 2 to this color. Now, this option below it, if I want to store this new value in a new variable, but I don't want to do that. I just want to change the variable 2. Now, next to it, I just need to tell the screen that a value has changed, so update yourself. And to do this, I will add a node called refresh. Now, by doing this, the screen will refresh to show the new color after the user click on the button. So now let's actually play this. So to play an app, I just need to click on this button and it will instantly play the app. The nice thing here, there's no build, there's no wait, you will instantly see the playing. And now, for example, if I click on the button, I can see now the color change to something else. Now here I can also see the text field, even active. I can even type something inside. Can maybe click on the navigation bar, but it's not set yet, so I cannot see any action. On the right side, I can change the device. So now I'm viewing it on an iPhone 15. I can maybe change the iPhone itself, or I can go with an iPad, or I want to see how it will look like on an Android device, or Windows, for example, or even Mac OS. So I have all the options that Flutter supports. Now let's go back to the iOS and let's go back to the iPhone 15. And if you see the options here you can restart the app. So if there's any state that change, you can restart. So if I click here, I can see now the color goes back as before because now I restarted the app. Now next to it, I can share the app. So I can share this app publicly or privately. Privately is only for the people who have access to the project. So the people I add in the workspace, and you can see this in the documentation. Publicly is I can share a link where anyone can actually see the app, and they can see the instant preview also of the app. Let's now shut down the preview. So as we said, a variable lives in two levels. It can live in a screen level or in the app level. If I don't select anything, then I can see here the global variables. If I select a screen or a widget in the screen, then I will see the variables list in the screen. Now I can see there is variables, there's also parameters, and parameters are variables, but I need to pass the value to this screen when I move to that screen. So for example, I can create a parameter here called text received. And then I will go to this text and I will connect the text property to the parameter I just created. So I will go to locals and then I will connect it to text received. Now here I can see, because there is no value in the default value, it will just show the name of the variable between brackets. But if I put something here like test, then I will see the actual value. So what is a parameter? Now I cannot change the value of the text received, but it allows me to pass values to this screen from outside. So if I have another screen, for example, I will add one here, and then I have, for example, a button, and I want, when I click on this button, to make it go to the home page, then I can simply go to the on press. And here I can add a node called navigator. And navigator will allow me to navigate to another screen. So when I choose that I want to navigate to the home page, and I can choose that here, and then by clicking on this brush icon, I can then see what parameters it needs. So in the home page, I can now see the parameter here. So if I pass something else like this is coming from another screen, and then I play the screen, so I need to click on the screen and then click play, so I can start the play from the other screen. If I click on the button, I can see the text now, this is coming. But why I cannot see the full text? Because the space is not allowing it, so I can just simply change the space from fixed to auto. So now if I go back again and click on the screen and click on the button, now I can see the full text, which is this is coming from another screen. Now if the other screen has a variable, and this variable is, default value is, this is a value of a variable, then when I go to the navigator node, instead of it being a fixed value, I can actually, again, I can deal with the properties here exactly as a details panel. So I can click on it, and then I can take the value from the variable one I created. So now, the same way I can connect properties in the details panel to variables, I can also do this in the circuit. So the text received, instead of it being a fixed value, I'm taking the value from variable 1. So now what's happening is the text from variable 1 in this new screen will be sent to the home page and it will be displayed in the home page. So now here in the empty page, I have variable 1 and the value is, this is a value of a variable. And now when I play the screen and I click on the button, now I can see here the text is, this is a value of the variable. Those are the basic information you need to build a full app. Now, another thing is that we can create something called a component. And a component is just a reusable widget that I can use in multiple places in the screen. But the nice thing is if I edit any instance of this component, it will be modified in all the instances. So let me, for example, create a quick component. So if I will drop, let's say, a container, and I will drop a text inside of it, and let's say I will drop a button as well inside of it. And now what I can do is I can just select all of them and click on Command G or Control G. So what happens here, as you can see, they all became a single widget under stack. Now, this stack, I can click on this button to convert it to a component. So I can call it my component and then submit. So now I created a component and you can see this icon next to it, which means this is a component. Now, I can duplicate the component by just hold Alt and drag it. Or I can just go to the widget picker and under components, I can see now my component and I can just drag it. And now I have 3 instances of the same component. So let's say if I change the color of one of the instances, it will change in all the instances. And this is used, for example, when you have a card that you're using in multiple places, you can create a component out of it. So if you want to modify anything in this design later, you can do it in one instance and it will be updated in all the instances. Now, inside a component, you can also create variables and parameters and functions. Now, exactly as you can create variables and parameters and functions for a screen, you can also do that for a component. So if I do this here, then I'm creating a variable inside the component and only widgets inside the component will be able to see this variable. So now this is variable 1. I can say this is from component, or I can just call it component text. And then if I go to the text here, for example, I can now connect it to the variable 1. And now you can see all the instances, text is the same, and now it's just connected to the variable. Now the same thing if we use a parameter. So if I create a parameter here, and I will also call it, let's say, param1, then if I'm using the instance in a screen, I can then here pass the value of the parameter. So let me now change the text of the component. So let me select the component, and then instead of it being connected to variable 1, I can now detach, and then I can connect it to the parameter. So now it's connected to the parameter. So now, as we said before, that the parameter is there to accept values coming from outside. For a component, parameter is also used to get values from the outside. So the outside here meaning the outer screen. So for example, I have now this instance of the component inside the home page, and if I scroll, I can see now my component gets a parameter. And if I pass a value here, for example, I can then pass specific value to that instance. Looking into the other ones, nothing changed. So this allows me to send specific data to an instance of a component by using the parameters, while the other components can have different data. So if I have this instance in another screen, I can now send, for example, here, this is from the board. And here I can say, this is from the home page. So using parameters, I can send different data to different instances while the instance itself from inside is the same. So now this should show you the basics of building apps in Nowa. Now let's go to the left side and let's check some exciting things. So here I can see now the AI agent, and here by writing prompts, I can now do anything I want, from fixing bugs to summarizing my app, to generating new screens or component, to connecting data to a screen or a component to actually build your app. Now, beside writing a prompt, you need to know the context. And here you can attach things to the prompt. So for example, if I attach, for example, the home page, now my prompt will be applied to the home page, meaning if I want to modify something specific in the home page, it's always good to add it as an attachment. So the AI will apply that prompt directly to the home page. This will make the AI quicker, know where to apply the prompt to, which will also consume less credits and will prevent changing anything outside what is attached here. Now, beside using the attachment icon, I can just even click to add attachment. So if I, for example, just select the other page, I can then see it also added as an attachment. So this is just a quick way to add things as an attachment. And when I click on the attach, I can see now all the components of my app, from the screen to the components to also the states. But what if I want to apply my prompt to a widget inside the screen? So you will not see it here in the list because this will show you the main components of your app, but I can use a selection to do that. So if I select a widget, now I can see it's added as context or as attachments. Now let me actually remove the home page. So now my prompt will be only applied to the container widget that I am selecting at the moment. So for example, if I tell it, change the background here to beautiful gradient background. Now I can see there's a working sign next to the widget, which means now it's actually being modified. And now I can already see the gradient background of the widget. If I scroll here in the details panel, now I can see the container has a gradient and it's linear, and I can even modify it. So anything the AI does, I can modify it visually and vice versa. Now if I click on play and I play the app, I can see a nice gradient was created here. Now, for example, I can also ask the AI to generate things from scratch. And in this case, I don't need to attach anything. So now I'm having the home page as attachment, but if I just click outside, nothing is attached. So for example, I can now tell the AI to generate a beautiful screen for, let's say, an e-commerce from scratch. Now, something else I can do is I can turn on the thinking mode. And the thinking mode usually is good when you want to generate a screen or multiple screens, but you don't need to use it when you do a small prompts, like prompts to modify some small details in a widget. So this will consume more tokens, but it will give you better output. So use it only when you have a complicated prompt. But here I'm just going to turn it on. I don't need to turn it on actually for this prompt, so I will turn it off, but you can do this when you are using some big or complicated prompts. Now it's done and I can see what it created. So now I can see it created a page or a screen called shoes homepage. It created a called shoe product, and it created even a component called shoe product card. So the way to view those things is by dropping it directly on the board. So now if I drop it on the board, I can see now the screen it created. If I also drop for example, the shoe product card, I can see now the card it created. Now it comes with this size, but if I resize it, now I can just play the app. So if I choose and I play the app, now of course the app is not fully functional. I just use prompts. So it created just a design for me, so I can with some more prompts to make it functional. To view also the consumption, you can look here that this is the input token this chat all took, and this is the output tokens it took. If I click here, I can now see the total input and output token and the total credit. So now I use 0.2 credit per those the things I actually prompted today. Now by clicking on this plus, I can now start a new chat. And if I go to the chat history, I can see now the previous history. Now I can also write some custom instructions. So if I want the AI to always follow some specific guidelines on design or on generating or editing, I can add it here, and those custom instructions will be used in every prompt you use in this project. You didn't like the change and you want to just revert the changes that the AI did. So just go up there, and here you will see something called restore checkpoint. If I click on it, it will tell me that it will just remove those three things because those are the three things that were created or modified after that prompt. So if I click on continue, I can wait a little bit, and then I can see it actually was completely removed from the board. So I just need to now delete them, and that's it. Now I can also reapply if I just change my mind again. And by doing this, now I can see that the page is now back in my project. So now moving here again, I can see now the pages and the components as we already talked before. And then here I can see the themes in my app. So in order for you to have a great design system, every property or every color property or typography in your app should be connected to the theme. So now if I change between light and dark, I can see here screens changing between light and dark. Now, why this didn't change? It's just simply because it's not connected to the theme. So for example, I can go to the home page and here it has a fixed color. But if I click on the color, then I can now change it to be connected to the themes here. So here I can actually make it connected to be a surface color. And now it's connected to the surface. So now if I change between light and dark, I can see now the color changing. And I can do this with the rest of the items. Now, now below brightness, I can see the mood option. And here, instead of having a fixed color, I can set one color and then it will create multiple variants of that color. So let's say I can choose, for example, the one seed color, and then those are variants of that color. Now here I can see now the colors of the app changing. Now I can also set the app bar to be also part of the theme color. And now I can also change back between light and dark. And now notice that even when you change between light and dark, it will use the same seed color to create a light version of your theme and a dark version of your theme. And you can also have a settings in your app to make the user change between light and dark. If I go a little bit below, I can see now the typography. And here I'll be able to see multiple text typographies, and I can even modify them if I want to modify the color, the font, and all those details. Now, if I go to one of the text, I can see an option, which is the style. And now this one is connected to body medium. If I change it to be, for example, title large, now I can see the size, for example, changed. Now I need to change this to auto, so I can see the entire text. Next, let's talk about the API collection. And here you'll be able to create all types of API collections. Now, if you click on the plus icon here, then I can create a new collection from scratch, or I can import requests from Swagger, Postman, or even Xano. Now, I will just create a new collection from scratch and I will just click on submit. Now here I can click on the plus icon to create a new request, or I can also import from curl if I have a curl command for a specific request. Usually if you go to any of the documentations, they have the requests as curl commands, but I will just start a new one and I'm going to keep the same name, which is new request. Now if I click on it, I can then here modify the type between get, post, and I have all the options I can use. Now here I can put the base URL, and with this option now when I click on add header, I can add a header to the request. So like key value pairs, I can now enter them. So now if I click on the body, then I can add a body to the request. Let's say I will add a JSON body. And here I can just paste a normal JSON body here. So let's say, for example, I'm using this request for authentication, and I will have an email and password, for example, as the body. Now here, I will want to inject data into this request that will come from the user. To do that, you will use something called parameter. So by clicking on a parameter, I can then add an email parameter. And then here, what I can do is I can simply just use $ and then open brackets and then write email. Now what I can see here, a preview that the email key of the JSON body takes the email parameter. So anything I will pass as the email to this request will be injected here. Now I can do this not just in the body, but even in the URL itself. So here, for example, if I have a link, then also I can then use the $ and then this menu will open. Under locals, I will see the email, and by clicking on it, then I'm injecting the email parameter in the link itself. Now, more on the APIs, you can see in the documentation. Now, next is Supabase, and here I will open an existing project that has Supabase so I can show you what you can do with Supabase. For example, I have this health tracker app and it's now connected to Supabase. So when you log in, when you connect your project in the first time, you will see that you'll be able to see some authentication methods right out of the box. So if I click on, for example, sign in, I can test this query. So here, for example, I have some credentials. And then here I can see that the request is successful and I can see the response from the Supabase. Now, if I put some wrong credentials, for example, then I can see that the authentication didn't work. And this is because if I go back to the Supabase project I have, and then I go to the authentication, I will see now the users I have in this project. And then here I can see my email. Now I can also test the sign up. So if I go to the sign up and I just put another email like test123@gmail.com, and I put like a random password that I will use for this email, then I can see the sign up is successful. If I go back to the Supabase and I refresh the panel, then I can see this test123 was actually created in my database. Now a verification email was sent, and here I can see even waiting for verification. So if this email was there, I will get a verification email that then I can use to verify. Now my project here in Supabase already has tables, and I have two tables. I have the profiles and I have transactions, and here it just adds all the transactions that every user actually records in the app. So here, for example, now I can click on plus and I can use AI to generate a query. So I can ask AI to give me queries that will, let's say, fetch the transaction for a specific user. And when you do this, you can then see that the queries being added under the queries list. So for example, here I can see a query called get user transactions, which will get all the transactions for a specific user. If I run the query, for example, now it gets all the transactions for me. Now, how did I know, or how did it know which account to use? Because here I am signed in as this account, which means any query that requires user authentication, it will use this user to get the data. So those are the queries, for example, or the transactions for that specific user. Now, I can actually modify the code. So here I can see the code for that query. So I can see here, it is taking the user ID into the query, therefore it's actually fetching my own transactions. Now I can also, for example, test this create transaction, and then here I will able to fill some data about the transaction, and by clicking on run, I'll be able to actually create the transaction. Now let's say you don't want to use AI and you want to use some templates. So you can simply go to the templates, and for example, I can go and choose one of the operations. So I will choose the create record, and then I can create a record in one of my two tables, the profiles or the transactions. If I go to the transactions, then if I have a model already for this table, which is the case because I already had a query, then I can just choose that model. If not, then I can create a new model that will model the data in the table. So here I will choose just the existing model, and then I will just generate the function. Now let's say you created all the transactions. How can you then connect it to the UI? So what you simply can do is just use the AI agent to do that. So for example, in this dashboard, I can just simply select it, go to the home page, and then in the attachment, I can add a file called Supabase service file. Now this Supabase service file is a file that contains all the Supabase queries that I will be using. So I can simply then tell it to connect the screen or power the screen by the queries inside this file. And that's all what I have to do to connect the queries to the screen. All right, that's all with Supabase for now. Now let's talk about the next part, which is get repository. So if I click on this option, I will now create a get repository for this cloud project. And by waiting a little bit, I will see now the changes, which I will need to comment all of them initially. So now here I see all the files of the project, and then I will be able to create the initial comment. So I will call it init and then comment all. So I need to just set an identity for it to know who is the person who's creating the comment. So I'm just gonna put some information and then set identity. And you need to do this only for one time. Now, if you go to the settings here, I can then click on manage remote, and then I can connect this repository to a remote repository that I have on GitHub. Now, after I do this, what I will be able to do is I can use push and pull to push my comments to GitHub and also pull changes from GitHub. Now, since I created the comment, let's now do some change in my project. So for example, let's say I will add a new container in my project and add it to the screen. Now, when I save the project, or it automatically saves anyway every 15 seconds, I can now see the changes. So here I can do another comment, or if I don't like the changes I did now, I can just simply click on discard. When I discard, as I see here, now the container disappeared and all the changes went away. This is a good and actually a must to keep track of the versioning of your app. Okay, so now let's go to the right side and see what are those options. So if I click on this option, now I can just compress a project, and when I compress a project, I can then download the source code of this app, and I can do this for free, by the way. Here I can deploy this app as a web app. So let's say I want to deploy this app as a development. So I can just click on publish and it will just build the app for me. So here I have two options. I have development and I have production. Development will create a link that is valid for 12 hours. After 12 hours, it will die. So you can use this link to just test quickly with your stakeholders or users or other team members. Now, then if you want the link to always be there, then choose production and deploy the link. And you can even add your custom domain to the production, so you can always have your app hosted in Nowa. And then any change you do in Nowa, with one click, you can push updates. Here now I can see the deployment just started. Now I can then see it was done, and I can see now the published date, and I can see now when it's expired. So let me actually open the link. Now, when you click on it, you might see that the preview link is still loading the moment it was done. So give it a few minutes and then refresh again. Now, after refreshing, I can see the app is now working. Now, of course, the layout was made for a phone. So what I can do actually, if I come back to the project, is I can change the layout of the screen from this Pixel 3a to make it, for example, the 1920 to 1080. And then here I can, for example, fix the layout. So for example, if I just move this widget, for example, to make it in the middle, if I want to like reorder some stuff here, let's say I did this change and then I want to update the link. If I go to the development and then I click on update, then the app will be instantly updated. So now I can see it is done. So if I go to the same link and just click on refresh, I will see now the screen was refreshed and the position of the widget changed. Let's go see the next thing. Now let's check out the settings. So here I can control the basic settings of the project. So from the project name to the app name to the bundle identifier, I can also here see the build version and the build number. So anytime I want to push update to the store, the only thing I need to do is just increase this build number. And if I want that this build number be associated with a new build version, I can also change it from here. Now here I can upload app icon. Now in the permissions, I can set permissions that if I need to. So if I'm using, let's say my app needs the camera or like the microphone, then I will turn on the permissions. Now if I go to the packages, I can see the list of packages already in my app. And if I want to add a new package, I can simply add it here with also the version. Now here I can see the Git. Now here I'm connecting already my Nowa to my GitHub repository. And if I go to the documentation, you will see the details of how you do this. Now this will allow you to clone from GitHub, and it will allow you to push changes and pull also comments from your repository from GitHub. Now here I will see the deployment section. And for example, for Android, I can build my app as a debugged version or as a release version. With the release version, I can generate a new key, or I can upload my existing signing key. And here I have to enter the key store password and the alias password. And then here I need to upload my key. Now, if I go to the iOS, then I also able to generate a new signing key, or I can upload my existing key if I have a certificate private key. Now, below this, I need to put my App Store credentials. So the key ID, issuer ID, and the App Store private key. Now, all of this is explained in the documentation. When I go to the web deployment, now I can see here that since I already built a development version of the app, and here's a link, I can see it here, I can deactivate it if I want to. And I can see, for example, here, when does it expire. Now, if I publish for production, then I can do the publishing for production. And when I do this, I will be even able to enter a custom domain. So let me do that. So now it's done, and here is the link for the production version. So this is permanent. This will not be deleted after 12 hours. And the nice thing here that I can set a custom domain if I have to. Now, what if you don't want your app to be hosted inside Nowa? And what you want is actually want to have the build files, so you host them on the server of your own choice. So like you can go for GitHub Pages or Vercel or any of the hosting services. Now for that, just click on download files and you will be able to get the build files, so you can host it on any server you want, or you can even run it locally. Now in the last two options, we see AdMob and Firebase. And here you can set up advertisements with AdMob by connecting the Android key and the iOS key. And Nowa offers the banner and interstitial ad as well. And for Firebase, you can use it to use Firestore and to also use the notification. So by connecting your Firebase project to the Google account that has a Firebase project on it, you can then do the setup and all of this is explained in the documentation. Okay, let me first actually revert back the screen to make it. So I'm gonna just now fix the layout just randomly and just change the screen to bring it back as a mobile app. Now, let's say you want to view the source code of the screen. What do? So go to screen itself and then click on this button, and this will open the screen or component in its own view. So now this is not a board anymore. This is a focused view that focuses on a single screen or component. Now, this is actually called the file preview. So what I am doing here is I'm viewing the homepage.dart file. Now, if I have multiple UI widgets inside the same file, I will see them actually here next to the homepage. So now in this file, I can see there is only the homepage as a design component, which is the screen. And next to it, I can see the code. So if I click on the code, I can see the source code of the screen. And it's actually a clean code that is using the Flutter native widgets, and it follows the Flutter best practices. Now, the nice thing is that this is a generated code, but I can also modify it. So there's no restrictions on code modification. You can write custom code, but you can also modify the generated code. So for example, let's say like I want to change the app bar from homepage to like edited homepage. And then when I click on compile, and it will just go back to the screen itself, and I can see here the text was modified. Now, it doesn't just go to text modification. You can change anything in the code. You can even, let's say, wrap widgets with another widgets, and it will also reflect it directly in the app. Now, let's talk about local projects. So what I'm going to do now is I will open Nowa desktop version. Now, this is the Nowa desktop version, and therefore I'm able to see the local projects in my app. But now if I go to the cloud project, and I can then open the same project I created on the cloud, what I can do is I can clone it as a local project. Now I can do this in two ways. So I can either click on the download button, which will download the source code of the app. And then when I do this, I can simply go to the local section, and by clicking here, I can then click on open. And when I open, I just choose the normal Flutter project that I just downloaded, and it will open it for me. But the problem here is that both projects will be disconnected, meaning you will have two separated projects, one on the cloud and one in the local. But what if you want them both to stay in sync? Here comes the syncing in play. So let's go back to the cloud project. And then I will go to the settings. And then here I can see there's a tab called Project Sync. So this will not just clone the cloud project as a local project, it will also keep them connected. So when you do a change in any of them, you can update the other one to be in sync. Okay, so now I will just choose a location for the project. So I will just choose my documents, and then I will click on clone to local. Now it's actually opened the cloned project as a local project. So now this is a local project. How can I know that? Because if I click here, I can see that I can build the app on a simulator. Now this option is only available as a local project, where you can have your own iOS simulator or your physical phone, and you can build the app on that simulator, and then you can instantly update it. Now if I just go back, I can see here this link, which means that this cloud project is now linked to local. If I go to the local project, I can also see that it's now linked to the cloud. So this means those two projects are in sync. Now I am opening the local project instance. So let's say I did a change here. So let's say I will just simply just do some changes in the layout. Or actually I will just remove this instance, or maybe I would just remove this text completely from the local instance. So if I go to the settings and I go to the project sync, I can then sync the cloud to be as the local. So now I am in the local project, and then I can go to the cloud card and click on sync from local. So what this will do is will push the changes I did on the local instance to be also on the cloud. When I click on proceed with sync, this is what will happen. So now it's done. And since, remember, I just deleted the text widget here. And now if I go back to the cloud version of this project, what I will find is that the text widget was deleted as well from the screen. So let's verify that. Yes, the text widget was deleted. Now, What is the ideal setup? On the cloud version, with it, you'll be able to build on the web, and you will be able to also deploy as an Android app or as an iOS app directly. Now, you cannot do this on the local project, or you can do them manually, but you cannot use the Nowa deployment services unless your project is a cloud project. But what you get on the local is that now, since I am on the cloud project, if I click here, I say I cannot run the app on a simulator. So to run the app on a physical simulator, you need to have the local project. Now, beside being able to run the app on a simulator, you usually get a better performance because the files are hosted on your own machine, so there is no network when you are working on the local project. And also, you can open your preferred IDE next to your local project, and anything you do on the IDE or in Nowa will sync instantly. So we can see this now in action. So now I will go to the local project. And now I will just go and view the source code. Now, since I am in the local project, I can see one extra option here, which is open in VS Code. So now if I click here, now I just need to call Flutter pub get, and then I can resize. So now, for example, if I go here, or I stay on the home page and just click on the home page, I can then now view the home page. So now let's say I can do any change in the code, and it will update instantly in my screen. So, yeah, for example, here I have the component that I created, and now I can see this is from the home page. So I can now modify it with VS Code. I can instantly now see how it was updated in my app. For example, let's say that when the user clicks on this button, I will make it change the two variables to another values. So here, for example, I will just change the values of the two variables to something else. So now I did some code change that the two variables will change to those values. Now, let's say instead of the gradient color here, I'm gonna make it connected to one of the variables, let's say variable 1. So now I did this code change. So now if I just play the app here and I click on the button, now I can see the color changed to this one. And even if I go check the button unpressed, I can now see that I changed the two values, and then I call refresh. I refresh 2 times. So if I just delete this, then I can instantly see even the circuit getting updated. For example, let's say I want to add a floating action button to this screen. So I will just go, and in the scaffold, I'm going to add a floating action button code. So here I added the code for floating action button with also showing a snack bar when the user clicks on this floating action button. Now notice here the floating action button was actually added, and I can even modify it. So the same way as I added this flash on, I can also come back to Nowa and just change it to something else. Now if I do this and I save, check now how the code updates even instantly. So now I change it to this. So let's say if I play the app and I click on the floating action button, then I can see the message. And even here, I can, when I select the floating action bar or the button, I can actually go to the on press and I can see the code. So here I can see the node which is show snack bar, which is the one was added here. Now the nice thing also here, because you have the files of the project, now you can modify anything freely in VS Code. So you will use it as a normal Flutter project. So I can go and even modify the platform files, or for example, like the Android files or the iOS files. So I have the freedom to change and control anything. And the nice thing is that I can still use Nowa even if I change anything in the code. Now, what about writing custom code? So you can actually write custom code anywhere in the project. So you can create a new file and write custom code, or you can write custom code even in this file. So for example, if I just come here and I just want to write a custom function right away, I can do that. For example, I can simply just write a custom function here that will just get a number and return the double of it. And then here in the circuit, I can simply just call it. So under the category of the app, I can now see the custom function, and I can see even the return type, and I can see it takes a parameter. So here I can then pass a parameter, which is a number, and then the result, I can just store it in a new variable. And here I can see the new variable by default is an integer, because here the return type is integer, and then I'll be able to use this function. Now notice that when you use a custom function, you need to run your app on a simulator. The preview here doesn't work if you have a custom function or a custom widget. So bear in mind one thing. Now you can write custom widgets, custom functions, custom expressions, but when you preview the app by clicking on play, you will get mock data. You will not get the actual results. So if you're using any of the custom things, then the best thing is you run a simulator to test your app. So let's do that. So now here in Nowa, what I will do now is I will click to run my app in a simulator. Now I can only see the macOS and the Chrome, but I want to run my app on an iOS or Android simulator. Simply just turn on the simulator and then it will be shown in the rest. So I will just turn on my iOS simulator. So here I can now see the iPhone 16 Plus added to the list. So when you're on your simulator, you have to wait a little bit until this list refreshes. So now I will choose the iPhone and then I will click on play. Okay, now the app is running. So now let's go back and use the custom functions that we did. So for example, here I will go and then I already calling the custom functions that will bring me double the number. So I will just pass 10. And then what I will do is just, I will show a snack bar. And in this snack bar, then here in the content, in the text, I will show the variable 3, which is a result of the custom function. And because it's a number, I have to convert it to a string. So now what I have is I'm calling the custom function, I'm passing 10 as a parameter, I'm storing the result in variable 3, and then in the snack bar, I'm just showing this variable, I'm converting it to string because it is a number. So that's it. So now I can simply just click on hot restart to restart the app for it to be updated. And now it did hot restart. So now if I click on the button, now I can see 20. So now the custom functions work and then I can see also the app works. Now the nice thing about having a local project with a simulator is that the changes instantly are built in the simulator. So for example, I will just move a little bit this, and then I will just save it. It instantly appeared in simulator. Let me try now, for example, to add a new widget. So for example, I will add this list view, for example, here. And then as soon as I click save, I can then now see it here. Actually, what I will want to do now is I want to just make this screen a nice looking screen for anything. So I will just go to the AI agent and tell it to turn this screen into a nice looking screen for a task, let's say task management app. Make the design modern and futuristic. Amazing. Now I can see even it created a really nice task management app. So I can now check things. I can even add, I think, a new task. This is nice. So I'm gonna add, for example, close the PR. Let me add it. Now I can see it here. I can see also the priority of it. I can check it. So now I did this only to be able to test this app on a simulator. So let me now do a hot restart. So now I can see instantly the app is here. And now, again, anything I do, it will instantly be reflected in the simulator. So now let's say I want to change this color to another color. For example, I was like, I'm going to make it a little bit of purple. And then as soon as I click on Command S or I click save here, I can instantly now see it being updated. Now, this is in terms of testing on simulator. So let's say you have physical device and you want your app to be running there and you want to instantly push the changes to your physical device. You can do this now with Nowa. So let me now connect my phone to my Mac and then we can see how changes instantly appear in my phone. So now I'm just gonna stop the simulator here. And now let me actually go to the devices and now I can see my actual phone, which is the Pixel 7 Pro. So if you cannot see it here, mostly you need just to turn on the developer mode on your phone. And when you do this, you'll be able to actually use your phone as a simulator while you're building. So now I'm going to choose the Pixel 7 and then I will just build it. Now I can see the app actually running on my phone and it looks amazing. And then let's now do a change. So here I'm going to show you how quick the updates are. So I will just change back, let's say the color to this blue color, or actually let's make it green to make it more visible. And then I'm just going to click on save and then I can instantly now see the color changed on my device. And this is when you do hot reload. So you get insane speed when you actually use hot reload while you're building in Nowa. So I'm going to see if I can do some design change. So now I can see here it created a row for me, and the row has a container. And then the container have the size box, and then there's a text one, and there's the text here. So I'm gonna, for example, just add a text just here, and I'm gonna call it like tasks list. And I'm gonna make it have like a title large. I'm gonna add a slight padding actually around it. And then here, I didn't save yet. So when I click on save, then I can instantly see the widget appearing on my device. So with this setup, you will be having the perfect setup to build production Flutter apps super fast with Nowa. Thank you for watching, and let's now build something great.